Okay, the illusion of fear. So that is one that is going to be challenging because most of you guys are not afraid, right? Are you afraid? Okay. Let's ask the ones who are not afraid to raise their hands. You're not afraid. Okay? Anyone else? Oh, everyone's afraid of something? Right? Everyone is afraid of something. President Obama is afraid of something. Okay? The interesting bit about fear is that when you look at a puffer fish, right? The puffer fish is puffed not because it's safe, it's because it's scared out of its skin, right? Every one of us puts a brave face on our faces. We make it look like we're confident and we make it look like we know what we're doing and that we're not worried in any way because that's how the society expects us to behave, but we're always, always afraid. And there is a simple test, okay? If you ever answer your question, am I afraid, by no, ask yourself a different question, am I free? Okay? Of course, this is the land of the free. We're all free, right? Are you free to take 3 months vacation and skip your courses? Worry is a level of fear. Worry, anxiety, all of that is fear. Okay? Can you? Why can't you? Because you're afraid. Okay? Can you leave your job tomorrow and say, I'm not going to work ever again? Why don't you? Because you're afraid. Oh, I'm going to starve. I'm going to die on the streets if I do that. Okay? Can you decide to walk to Mexico? Why not? Because you're afraid. It's going to hurt. Someone's going to, steal something from me. Can you leave your door open? Can you walk the streets of New York at midnight? Why? Because you're afraid. There's always something that you're afraid of. I had 3 major fears in my life. I have little fears all the time. I'll share them with you as we go along. But the trick is, as long as you're afraid, it's a huge illusion. Okay? Nothing becomes. You cannot really be happy when you're afraid. If there is always something, on top of your head expecting that it will go wrong, when you're expecting that it will go wrong, then you can never be happy. And there is a method. I think it's a little complicated for a session, but I'll just walk you through it very quickly, and we can talk about it in details offline, that gets you to understand why you're afraid and what can you do to take away your fear. How can you conquer the illusion of fear? The first one is to admit that you're afraid. So I'm very, very proud of all of you. Every one of you said, I'm afraid of something, so we don't need to spend time on this. The second step is understanding what fear is. So fear is a conditioned response. Fear, worry, anxiety, all of the versions, the variations of fear is a conditioned response. The best example that explains this, I'm sorry, the quality of the graphics are horrible, but anyway, anyone aware of Little Albert, the experience? Right? So experiment that was done in 1920, I think, or the 20s, by a bit of a devious scientist in behaviorism, was Little Albert. And Little Albert was a young infant, I think 9 months old or something like that, where they would give Little Albert things to play with. Toys, sometimes pets, sometimes a snake, sometimes a rat, whatever. Okay? And because Little Albert is not conditioned to fear any of them, he would like all of them. He would, anything that's presented to him, he would like. And then they picked the white rat, which was Little Albert's favorite, as a matter of fact. And every time they presented Little Albert with the white rat, they hit a big steel bar behind his head. Made a huge sound, Albert would cry in fear. Very quickly, within less than 6 weeks, Little Albert would cry at the sight of the white rat without having to hear the big noise. Okay? Now, what happens in Little Albert's brain is that it associates the event with the conditioning, and you don't need the conditioning anymore to be afraid. Okay? You don't need to hear the sound anymore. Your brain buries it somewhere very deep and says, this is not good, white rat is bad, I fear white rats, I never want to see white rats again. Okay? Now, those fears can turn into phobias, and some of the phobias we have are unrealistic. right? So the fear of spiders, for example, I mean, there are spiders that are poisonous, but most spiders are really not that, sustainable in the face of a shoe, right? So, you step on them, they're gone. They're not that, that's really that resilient. Some of them are creepy, but creepy is not scary, right? I mean, some of them are very big, which means you need a big shoe, but hey, still a shoe, right? They move a little fast, 8 legs, very creepy, but, right? People who are afraid of spiders would actually run if they hear that there is a spider in the room. If they see one web somewhere, they would really get panic attacks. They would get sweaty, and they get heart rates and faster heart rates and so on. Now, you have, for us who are not afraid of spiders, you have to wonder why. Because the conditioned fear in their mind is bigger than the actual reason that they are afraid. So conditioning is one side. I'm going to ask you for a minute to try. Step number 2 is to define your own fears. Okay? And this is just a subset, just to give you an example, but you want to learn how to spot your fears. So I'm going to take you through them very quickly. The one on the top with the history test at F is the fear of failure. Okay? Fear of failure is I get very scared when I don't achieve the results that I expect to achieve. Anyone has that fear? Fear of failure? Yeah, used to be one of my biggest fears. Okay? The other one on here is fear of loneliness. Very common fear across teenagers. I want to fit in. I want to be part of the community. If I'm alone, I would feel deserted. And that actually is a big fear that relates to our survival. Anyone afraid of loneliness? Okay, some of you. There is the fear of the unknown, the question mark up there. If I don't know what's going to happen, then I'm really fearful, regardless of it's going to be good or bad. I'm just fearful of the unknown. Yep. Okay, few out there. There is the fear of death, of course. Anyone doesn't fear death? You don't fear death? Okay, so the others fear death. Anyone fears death? Oh yeah, it's also part of the fear of the unknown, isn't it? It's the ultimate unknown. There is up there the fear of missing expectations. This is different than the fear of failure. Okay, fear of missing expectations is how will my mother think of me? Anyone has that? Oh, that's a confident bunch. Very good. There is a fear of ridicule, that people will make fun of me. It also manifests in the fear of public speaking. Do you have that? Okay, that's the biggest fear in America. There are jokes going around that Americans fear public speaking more than they fear death itself. All right, so there is the fear of losing one's freedom. Anyone? Okay, that is also translates into the fear of commitment. So young men and women who don't want to get married, for example, that's part of the fear of commitment. Okay, and in the middle out there, I don't actually remember what that one down there is. Fear of rejection, absolutely, that's a biggie. Who has the fear of rejection? Oh, come on, seriously, very confident bunch here. All right, and then there is the fear of facing oneself, okay? The fear of facing your own fears. Do you have that? Yep. Actually, I think many more of us have that. So the way your brain wants you to stay in fear is by telling you it's okay to be afraid, okay? It's okay, you're good. You know what? On that one point, other than the little black dot on your forehead, which is a disaster, to be afraid of failure is okay. To be afraid of rejection is okay. To live your life in fear is okay. Okay? And one of the biggest fears many people have is the fear of really looking in the mirror and saying, that's not good enough. Okay? I shouldn't live in fear, or I shouldn't live unhappy, okay? It's okay as it is right now. If you identify your own fears, why are you not answering me? Oh, okay. I should have pressed the 1 minute. Oops. When you identify your own fears, then you need to understand how your brain plays, okay? Fear is your brain's biggest fortress. Okay? This is its stronghold. This is where it will keep you, where it wants you to be. Remember, your brain's task is to ensure your survival. Okay? And there is no better tactic to keep you surviving other than fear. It's the best tactic. Okay? I don't care as Mr. Brain. Your brain doesn't care if you're unhappy. Doesn't matter. Okay? I just need to make sure you're safe. And what's the easiest way to make sure you're safe? Is to make you fearful of everything. So your brain, and I'm not a psychologist, so correct me if I'm wrong, okay? The way I look at my brain is that my brain builds what I call a safe model, okay? A safe model is, if I have a fear, let's say I take the fear of heights, okay? If I am afraid of heights, I would start to say, I want to stay away from places where I can be in heights. I want to stay away from the edge. I am afraid of coming close to the edge. I am afraid of aeroplanes. I'm afraid of anything that gets me close to heights. Okay? So you start to build a safe model. A safe model in this example is, if I have a fear of rejection, okay, your brain buries that very deep inside. It tells you, you know, rejection is bad. Anything that relates to rejection, like, for example, fear of being judged. Okay? If someone judges me, often that would relate to them rejecting me, or sometimes it would relate to them rejecting me. I might as well make sure that I'm never judged. Okay? And so, but I get judged when I express my emotions openly. Right? So I should fear expressing my emotions openly. That is safer than just fearing being judged. Okay? But if I feel emotions, I have to express them. So maybe I should also fear emotions in general. Okay? If I don't have emotions, I don't express them. If I don't express them, I don't get judged. If I don't get judged, I don't get rejected. Okay? And those fears start to build a safe model. Okay? A safe model really is, the more nodes I stay away from my core fear, I fear more things. And the more things I can fear, the safer I stay. Okay? Interesting. Because in reality, what you end up building is, I don't know the name of that game. You know that game where you have little wooden pieces that you put on top of each other and you have to, what is it? Jenga. Yeah, right? So what you really are doing is you're building a very fragile structure. The more nodes you add, the more attack points you have. Okay? The more things you're trying to protect, the more everything becomes fearful. Right? Everything becomes a failure point. The more failure points you add to your safe model, the more fragile your safe model, the more unsafe your safe model becomes. Right? So think about that. Think about how sometimes what you're really afraid of, the core fear, is causing you so many other fears. Okay? So the fear of lack. You fear lack, then you fear being out of a job, then you go to a bad job, okay? You fear being out of a job, so you fear failure, so you try really hard to get scores in Stanford that are even higher, and so on, right? Every one of those becomes a fear, and the nodes end up multiplying. I think the point I want to leave you with here in very explicit English is there is no safe model, okay? The more nodes you add, the more unsafe the model becomes. Now I need you to start to want to not be in fear, okay? Again, like we said, the only way for you to be happy is to decide to solve for happy. The only way for you to not be afraid is to decide that you never, ever want to be afraid again, okay? And the example I use in Solve for Happy is something I call the dome of fear. And the dome of fear is, again, a hypothetical story about some mad scientist somewhere that decides to replicate the little Albert experience, but you are the subject now. He takes your home, he puts an invisible dome on top of it, okay? And he basically keeps you inside. You're stuck in that little dome, and every time you approach the invisible dome, you get zapped with electricity. It's very uncomfortable. It doesn't kill you. It's very uncomfortable. So you try a few times, and after a few times, you tell yourself, you know what? I'm done with this. I cannot take this pain anymore. Home is nice, right? There is coffee, there is Netflix, everything's okay. Oh, he even gave me access to Facebook. Everything's nice, right? I'm okay at home. Few weeks later, that mad scientist, evil as he is, gets squished by an elephant. The elephant kicks him around, and he dies, right? So he doesn't pay his electricity bill, and the dome disappears, right? But the dome disappears. It's invisible anyway. You've stopped trying, okay? So you don't come near the dome anyway. You're in your home. Electricity bill is out, so it gets dark at night. Home is not as nice anymore, but you tell yourself, you know what, it's good. Actually, it's good. I want to sleep early. I mean, seriously, staying late is not a great thing. The fresh food starts to wear out. He doesn't supply fresh food anymore. You start opening cans, and you're like, yeah, okay, I'll live with that. Cans are fine. I want to stay healthy, right? And then, it starts to get cold. But you're like, yeah, I can light a few things here, and it's okay. I love, but I'm not coming near that dome. Seriously, the zaps, I just don't like those. A few weeks later, a door-to-door salesman knocks on the door, and now you're like really worried. Someone is coming to invade the privacy, the wonderful life that I have at home. How did that guy come through the dome, right? And suddenly you're like behind that closed door, and you're saying, what do you want? And he says, oh, I have that amazing product. I don't care about your product. How did you come through the dome? And he realizes you're a bit mad there, so he goes like, what dome? And you go like, leave, and he runs away. And then a few days later, you come out, and you realize that it's been miserable for the last few weeks, so you go very, very carefully and try to touch that dome, and there is no dome, right? You've been in cold, eating cans, no Facebook for a few weeks, right? And there is no dome. There is really nothing, okay? And that's exactly what happens to us when we are in fear. Because it's just a conditioned response to something that's as tiny as a spider, right? But we tend to stay inside and morph our lives. It's like, okay, I'm going to live with it. It's fine. I'm afraid of failure. I'm going to just try very hard, and I'm going to work really, really hard, and you know what? I will just live with it, okay? But that's not life. That truly is not life. The true life is to just run through the dome, seriously, okay? To run through the dome, there is a technique, okay? I call the interrogation. And this technique is going to take us 4 minutes, and then we'll be done. The 4 minutes are you talking to someone, so find a friend. For a couple of minutes, I want you to take one of your fears. It doesn't have to be, I am afraid of rejection, okay? Just say, maybe, it could be, I'm afraid of rejection, or it could be, I'm afraid I'll fail on Monday, whatever, okay? I'll fail my test on Monday. And try to define what is it that you're exactly afraid of. I gave you the example of the fear of heights, okay? So people who are afraid of heights, if you put them in high places, they don't jump from the height. Actually, they stay in the height, right? Why? Because they're not really afraid of heights. They're afraid of falling from heights, okay? So, and actually, if you push them, and they know that they're going to be safe, they're going to be fine with jumping from heights. They're not afraid from falling. They're afraid from the pain, afraid of the pain that happens when you hit the ground after falling from a height. So look at your fear, try to find the core, follow your safe model, and try to find what is the conditioning, what is it that you're really afraid of, okay? And then there will be 2 steps. Those 2 steps have worked for me. I had several fears, and they have worked for me. How bad is it really? Okay? I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm so afraid I'm going to lose my job. How bad is it really? What's the worst that can happen? Right? How likely is that to happen? These are the questions. Okay? And can I survive? Can I recover if it happens? Right? Then what am I missing? That's the opposite side of fear. What am I missing? What's the cost of doing nothing? Right? I'm so afraid of losing my job that I'm sticking to this job. What's the cost of that? I'll feel miserable. It's not the best job I can get, and so on. But what if it works out? What if I lose my job and get a better job? Have you ever thought of that? Okay? And what is the best case scenario? So in one side, how bad really is it really is the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is actually quite interesting. Okay? What can happen if I face my fear? What would happen if I just jump? Right? Just take my fear and tell myself, you know what, I'm afraid of public speaking. I'm going to publicly speak. What's the worst that can happen and what's the best that can happen? Okay, so 2 minutes for each of us to think, and then 1 minute for us to exchange with each other. So you will share with the person next to you what your fear is. They will ask you the questions about what's the worst that can happen, what's the best that can happen. And let's just see at the end of this very, very quickly if you see your fear the same way. 4 minutes, starting with 2. Anyone willing to share what your fear was? What's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? No, that's my fear. Please go ahead. Can we have a mic for... yeah. Here. Yeah, for you.
Oh, yeah, well, the irony is this is actually by doing this, I'm overcoming my fear because I have a fear of expressing myself.
Okay.
So,
ironic.
It's right. And so I had to go through the worst that would happen is, the judgment, that I felt, or the non-acceptance. And on the what is missing, the cost of doing nothing, I have experienced just that it will manifest, the suppression of not expressing oneself manifests itself physically or another way. So I kept getting the nudges. And then when I wasn't paying attention to that, the nudges get bigger and bigger, And so I find that the best case scenario is express myself and I can rid myself of the negative consequences.
Can I ask you a few questions on this? So what's the worst that can happen? You express yourself, people don't appreciate what you said. Can I ask you, how likely is this to happen? I mean, in reality, you express yourself very, very elegantly, so eloquently. So how likely is it to happen? Not very likely. Most of the time, our fears are exaggerated so much that we think that if we meet a spider, it's going to eat us alive. How likely is that to happen, right? And can I survive it if it happens? That's a really key question, okay? What if I express myself and people dislike it? What will happen? Can I survive that? I mean, okay, I'll feel bad for a minute. If I take out the thought, will there be anything bad left behind that? Nothing really, okay? Can I recover? That's a very, very interesting question, okay? Okay, so I expressed myself, people didn't like me, even though it's very unlikely, it's like 1% chance, but then, I survived it because I will still be there, and then can I recover? It's like, will I vanish for the rest of my life? Do you think about those questions sometimes? Our fear just goes way out of control. It's like so exaggerated. We never think of those possibilities. But I love what you said about what's the cost of doing nothing, okay? Can I ask you what would be the best case scenario? What if you expressed yourself today and then expressed yourself tomorrow and then expressed yourself after tomorrow? What would that be?
I would feel at peace because my actions would be consistent with my feelings.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And so you know what happens then? What happens then is that we deprive ourselves of something so valuable because we're afraid of something very unlikely that we can actually survive. Right? Any other examples anyone else wants to share? You private group, you private tired group. Okay. Let me follow on that example. Okay. So you deprive yourself from something amazing because of a fear that's unlikely to happen that you can survive. Okay. What should you do when you realize that? What should you do when you realize that? I'm sorry. What's your name? Chris. You should do exactly what Chris did. Okay. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. If you fear public speaking, book the nearest public speaking appointment. Okay? Get yourself framed. Okay? If you fear driving a bike, take a bike lesson. Okay? If you fear bungee jumping, tomorrow is Sunday. Okay? Don't wait until the next Saturday. Literally, do it tomorrow. Book the appointment, pay the money, frame yourself. Okay? Surprisingly, that's the easiest way to overcome fears. One of my biggest fears, I say that, was losing one of my kids. That's one of my, I spent my entire life, I loved those kids so much. One of my biggest fears was losing one of my kids. I don't have that fear anymore. It's as simple as that, okay? Life does not only nudge you, it puts you face to face with your fears. If you don't face it yourself, it will get you there. It will get you there. It won't, it doesn't wait for you. Go ahead. Fear of failure? Put yourself in a difficult test and fail. Seriously, fail. What would happen if you fail? Like you have a test on Monday and you're fearing failure? Don't show up. Jennifer's going to kill me here. Just don't show up. See what happens. Okay, it is chat time, so let's chat.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I want to ask if fear is always bad and maladaptive, because I noticed that...
very typical question.
Because I noticed that, so like my fear was to not get a job after I graduate, and that makes me work harder. So in my case, I think I can harness the fear into motivation to act.
So everyone who is very, very conditioned to accept their illusions will always ask those questions about ambition, about fear. Fear is good, Mo. We need to be afraid because it motivates us to take action. No, you can take the action without the emotion and without the fear, right? It's the action that matters. It's not the emotion that triggers it. Right? So I work hard. I still work 12-hour days, right? I do my absolute best not to fail, but not because I'm afraid of failure, okay? It's because I want to succeed. There is a huge difference between being afraid of failure and wanting to succeed. And by the way, even if I don't want to succeed, I can still work 12-hour days, and I can still succeed. So believe it or not, I'm not crazy about success anymore. As I told some of the group here, I've already been paid, okay? But that doesn't prevent me from taking the right action. Action and emotion and thoughts are separate. You don't need to be fearful to be the best that you can. We're taught in our young childhood, I mean, my mother, I love my mother. Sorry, mommy. My mother told me when I was a young man that if I don't get an A+ in all of my tests, I will spend my entire life as a garbage collector, okay? And I believed her. I was always an A student, but are you serious? All of those B+ are garbage collectors? Seriously? I mean, that's way overrated. And by the way, she really didn't need to do that. I wanted to be an A+. I loved, knowledge and science, and I enjoyed it. I didn't need the fear. You understand? It's the action. It's not the emotion. More questions? Yes.
Wait. Yeah, thank you. How do you reconcile choosing to do the things that you're afraid of with choosing the things that make you happy? Because choosing the things that you're afraid of a lot of times don't make you happy.
Brilliant question. So choosing to do the things that make you afraid will make you unhappy for a couple of hours and then happy for the rest of your life when you find out that your fear is unfounded, okay? Choosing to stay in your happy corner and stay afraid is going to always give you that underlying feeling of I'm afraid, okay? Which takes away your happiness. So truly it is a simple choice of I will take a little bit of pain and eliminate a ton of suffering, versus I will stay where I am and stay afraid for the rest of your life. It's definitely worth the gamble. It's definitely worth the risk. And I guarantee you, unless your fear is fear of falling from a skyscraper without a parachute, you're safe. Most of the fears are actually unfounded.
So follow up to that, what about if it also involves complexity on the financial side?
Yep. No, how bad can it be? If you go through the exercise, okay, so I lose my job, I don't have income for the next 3 months. Does that mean I will die? Seriously? Does that mean I'm not going to find another job? Seriously? You're at Stanford. You're always going to find a job. right? Does that mean that I'm going to have to suffer a little bit, maybe sell my car or move in with a friend? Can I survive? Okay? Of course I can. Anyone in this room will survive, right? But we don't look at the fear that way. We think that losing an income is going to kill us. It's not going to kill you. Can you recover? Of course, you're going to find another job. There is nothing to be afraid of. And by the way, as I told you, and I don't mean to make you fearful by saying that, if you don't choose to face it, life will put you face to face with it. Okay? So you might as well face it.